Hello, hello, everybody. Right on time, too. Great. Wonderful. Love it. Hey, son of a beach. How's it going? God, I gotta see if I can get that stream delay a little bit lower latency next time. Let's see. Where are we? This is just a random doc. Random doc. Random doc. Dang, that's really far over on the X. Oh, that's the Bevy ECS child crate, though. That's fine. That's expected. So, let's see where we are. Run this. Actually, I want to get rid of some of the development stuff. Development time? I don't know that I'm going to call it that, but... Let's see. Main here. I do need to start doing a little bit of the documentation stuff here. Just to get those warnings away. I added a couple of lints to the project. So things like allowing type complexity or too many arguments, which are things that can trigger for Bevy apps. And then I want to be able to have docs for everything. So I'm letting Rust warn me if I don't write docs for stuff now. Yeah, I saw your comment on the YouTube video. It's on my list. What do you need to know about? Oh, you don't have any idea how to use them. Gotcha. Okay. Yeah. Is that because you're trying to use the AABB and not the AABB 2D? Docs.bevy, rs bevy, AABB 2D. No, the AABB 2D is the one without the component. Yeah, that makes sense. No, it's more complicated. Yeah, I can do something for that for you. Probably next week. There is a difference currently between AABB and AABB 2D and 3D. The 2D and 3D would be the ones that you wanted. And then there's bounding volume, which is the trait, which I think you're aware of already. And you're looking to do intersection, like collision kind of stuff, right? That's what you would want the video to be. Let's see here. Main. I want to take out some of the development stuff that I have going on in here. Not the stats, but the perf UI plugin, yes. I guess I'll leave the world inspector. So I have Bevy eGUI or Bevy inspector eGUI in here. I also have the perf UI plugin. I don't care about perf right now. So I'm just kind of using it as a thing to look at. But it'll take up a lot of space on screen. The world inspector plugin, I don't know that we'll need it. So I think I'll take that out for the second too, but it is there and it runs. What happened there? What an error. All right. Well, I guess linker failure. Linker failure is really weird. That means I updated something. I don't remember updating anything. I guess we'll do a clean. Hey, Steve. How's it going? So that'll take a second. There is... Wow, I have too many things open. The Bevy examples under the games, under breakout, I think uses the AABBs. And they're just kind of like, if I remember correctly, in this example, they're just kind of constructed like on demand. So like when the system needs it, it just kind of makes it. Whereas if you are looking for something that is more component based, Bevy XPBD 2D actually has a wider range of colliders. So I think Bevy currently only has AABB or axis aligned bounding box and circle or something like that. But XPBD has ball and capsule and cast ray and I guess there's some ray casting in Bevy as well, but you know, ellipse and half space and height field and polyline and rectangle and triangle and etc. and like mesh stuff. So like if you're really looking for something that is going to apply to a lot of things right now, I would look at the Bevy XPBD 2D or the Rapier colliders, which I think are also component based. Yeah. I think that if you're looking for something component based, XPBD 2D or 3D or Rapier 2D or 3D are probably your better bets right now. But this example is the breakout example. So if you want to go look at that, I have like every editor possible open. Let's see if I actually, do I still have Photoshop open? I do. Can we get rid of Photoshop? Maybe save a little bit of processing power. I have Photoshop open. I have Blender open. I have Tiled open. I had LGTK open yesterday. Looks like I have LGTK closed. I have Tiled open. I had DaVinci Resolve open at the same time. Been opening a lot of stuff. I just did a cargo clean, so we're just waiting for a second. What are my plans for the day for this video? I fixed all the positional stuff. So I think that I'm going to do collision for the player today. Let's see. So the way that this is working out right now is these colliders. I have a collider here for like this switch and a collider here for this like random test block here. And those are on the sprite sheet. So I can add more colliders to more things, and then we can place them in the world. And then the other thing is we have the player running around, so I want to get the player interacting with, you know, like the colliders in the scene. And I think that's my overall like goal for today. If the player runs around and runs into stuff, then I'm happy with that. I think, for example, like these are going to end up having to be like one way. So on the, actually haven't decided how I want these to work yet, because this is a prototype tile set too. So I don't want to get too into like the specifics of the tile set, if that makes sense. But I think if I was going to have a little ledge like this, you would probably be able to walk up it. So it would probably be a one-way or a zero-way collider. You would either be able to do it and there's no collider here, or you could go down but not up if it was high enough. Something like that. Will this be a static map or auto-generated? Right now, it's going to be static. We could procedurally generate something in the future. But that will not be this stream. I don't think I'll auto-generate this stream. I think procedural generation takes a while before it's there's goes our game. So this is where we are right now. My keyboard worked. We've got our character moving around. We've got all these circle colliders are placed on the center point of every one of the tiles that we have in the scene. So for example, right here, we have 2 of them because we have these poles here, as well as the tile. So the ordering is a little bit off, which is not great, but it's a problem to fix at some point, basically. My computer doesn't want to cooperate today. Nothing else should have a lock on that directory. I think I'm just running too many things. So there's this issue right now where if I run this a couple of times, you'll see that the tile for the collider under the player isn't showing up, but now it is. So this green collider here is on this switch, which needs to turn into like a sensor or something to see if you, like depress it. So we need to add some extra metadata to that tile. But there are some like Z indexing issues that I do need to figure out at some point. This black plus sign is 00 in world space. Probably the LSP from the code editor. Yeah, that makes sense. I think I haven't restarted VS Code in like 3 weeks or something, so. And I always end up with like 10 VS Code workspaces open. I need to figure out some workflow around that. So I think we're good on the debug like colliders here. So I think I'm going to get rid of these to start with. Because all I'm doing right now is like layer index plus, this is the debug render. So this is just a collider on every single thing. We could feature flag that, but I think I'm just going to comment it out for the moment. I don't know what you're saying what to. And then I think we have the gizmos in here. Yeah, debug gizmos. So I'll get rid of these debug gizmos because we don't need them anymore. So that should get rid of all of the extra colliders. And then we're good for rectangles and we're good for polylines. We might be good for ellipse. A lot of cars going by this morning. I wonder how the Sims made colliders so the Sim rig moved up the second floor. How do they make platform levels in isometric games? We can cover that in a second. Okay, so if we look at the thing here, right? Do we have stairs? I think we have stairs somewhere. We have stairs like here, right? So like if I place stairs here, then actually let's do, I'm not sure if I should do that on a new layer or not. But basically you put the stairs here, right? And then you need another layer, which actually, now that I think about it, I don't know that I'm using the offsets. But let's do another tile layer here. We'll do upper floor like this, because I think that offsets it. We could potentially do 2 stairs, but I'm not going to mess with that for the moment. Let me figure out how to offset this. Layer properties. Layer properties did not show up. Come on. The other issue is I don't know how to work tiled. So in any case, the like stairs in a 2D isometric game are not actually stairs. So like if you have these 3D looking stairs here, right? This is actually just you walking like in a slight northeast directional flat, right? You're not actually walking upstairs. It just looks like you're walking upstairs. Similar, I think there's a ladder in here too somewhere. I can't see this at I can't even see this at 6%. I can't, y'all are not going to see this at 6%. There's a ladder in this pack somewhere. There we go. So like if we put this ladder somewhere, right? Like I don't know, there or something. Like you don't climb the ladder, so to speak. You just walk over the space that the ladder looks like it's in. And then we would place another layer on top here that had like an offset. So like we would end up with like a tile over here or something, right? So you would get to this tile, you'd get to where the ladder is. The game would basically detect that you're trying to go up a ladder and do very slow vertical Y movement. And it would look like you're going up the ladder, but you're not actually like going up anything. You're just kind of moving upward in the Y-axis very slowly with like a climbing animation. So then you get up to the top and you're like on the next level, but like, are you really on the next level? No. How do I get rid of this tile? Eraser somewhere? How will you apply colliders for different shapes? This is how we do that. Let's see, what do we have here? Let's do one of these little like, let's do like this, right? So let's do, should we put this on floors? I guess we'll put this on floors. We'll put that there. And I will use the same floor tile I've been using, I think. Actually, this needs to go over that if I do that. So like, we'll do this on the upper floor layer. I'm gonna have to rename these layers after stream. But okay, so we do this, right? If I want to put a collider on that tile, I need to go find the relevant tile, which is this one. And I need to take this and go, okay, so I think this is going to be from here to here, to here, to like here to there. So that's the collider for like this fence, right? Because realistically, this fence is going to show in front of you, but the collider is only on like the floor, if that makes sense. So like I don't make colliders for the entire fence object because the only thing that's going to matter is what's on the ground. Because this is a 2D game, remember? Right? What did I click? Did I mess something? Okay, no, we're good. So yeah, remember this is like, it looks 3D, but it's 2D isometric. So it's actually a 2D game. We only move on the X and the Y axes. We don't have Z axis movement. So if I export this, I thought I had the game running. I guess I killed it. Nice, got the idea? Yeah. So this is interesting right here. I guess do I not have the rotation there? This is a collider issue. But you see how the collider shows up in game right now. So we do have polygons working. Not React TSX. It's not React TSX. Don't worry, Dax. It's not TypeScript. It's a JSON file, effectively. Well, not a JSON file. Tiled isn't JSON. Let me show you. That's our tiled session. So this is the map, effectively. Well, this is the one we're using. So basically it's XML, which I don't like at all. I wish they'd use something else. But it's XML, for better or worse. And then we get this map, and we have the tile set embedded in here, which just points to our texture atlas, which is a PNG. It's got like width and height and like how many tiles are in it and stuff like that. There's some objects here for the colliders and stuff. And then we have effectively CSV data embedded in the XML data. Yeah. I'm getting to that. The TSX file is that embedded piece of the map. So like if you look at this, it says tile set. TSX is a tile set file for the tiled level editor. And you'll see that this XML is exactly the same as the XML that I was just talking about with the width and the height and stuff. So we just take that and we embed it into the TMX file. Yeah. So it's just XML, just some data. It is not, I know it looks a little bit like it could be tags and it could be TypeScript. Like theoretically, if you had a bunch of objects like this, it could be rendered. But it is not. This is not TypeScript. It has nothing to do with the DOM, or it has nothing to do with like a virtual DOM or something that renders in React Native or whatever. It is just XML. Am I going to do something on Free Code Camp if they ask? They have not reached out to me at all, so I don't. That's not even a question that I need to contend with. If you haven't been asked to do something, it's really easy to not have an answer. I think it depends. So let's get rid of that file, get rid of this file, get rid of that file. So I'm curious about this collider here, because I drew the collider and it is seemingly drawing on the wrong axes. So the collider that I was using for polylines before is this one, or polygon, sorry, not polyline, is this one. This is a rectangle on the left, and this is a polygon on the right. The idea of a parsed lang that goes in another thing. Yeah. I mean, there's DSLs everywhere, right? Like DSLs are like a very, 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 very common thing. And actually, I think developers actually like to build them. So not surprised to see more of them. So if we do, where's our polygon logic? Polygon logic is here. So the only thing I can think of is that there's a rotation. Let's go back and look at the map file to see if there actually is. We got polygon. I don't see a rotation. 0, 0, whatever. I don't see a rotation mentioned in the map. Let's take a look at the TSX. So we can select this collider and it'll show us the debug stuff on the left. So that is also not rotated at all. So it's got to be a flip, right? I have to have flipped the x-axis or something. Why can't Rust itself be used to describe data? It can. Here is what's called RON, or Rusty Object Notation. This is actually used in quite a few places, and especially it's used for some Bevy stuff. Hey, Nikki, how's it going? Flip and not a flop? No, I'm not sure. It's just my first thoughts. So you can do like Rusty object notation for things that you want to bring in. That is totally a thing. It is definitely like possible. And you can also actually literally just write Rust code. So Rust include will let you actually just write a Rust file and include it in your project. Basically. I'm simplifying a lot here because I'm not going to get into it. But it basically just like takes a chunk of Rust code and just like puts it into your project. Looks like more than a mirror than a rotation, so -1. Yes, that is what I was thinking as well. I think because it's the individual points that are being placed here. So my question is, I did something yesterday that seemed to help, but maybe hurt more than it helped. And that's that I flipped that subtraction. So basically the problem here is that we have X coordinates in tiled coordinates, which are from the left-hand side. You can go from 0 to 256 on the X-axis. And oop, that is not what I wanted to do. This is polygon, right? Cool. You can go from 0 to 256 on the X-axis for tiled, but in Bevy, it's from -128 to 128. So we have to do a little bit of math to translate those two things. And thus, I've been fiddling a lot with very like, it's very basic math on some level, but it's hard to keep like the 3 stacks worth of stuff in my head. So like this is just not in the right place, and it's also not changing. Rust macros are a bit scary when looking at them, but much more easy cool than in other languages. I think they're a lot easier than in, say, JavaScript, which doesn't have built-in macros, right? So JavaScript's ecosystem relies on like Babel or something like that to write plugins, and it can be tough to work with those, especially since it's just like a third-party kind of thing. I would say that Rust macros are kind of like Babel plugins built into the language, and macros have their problems too. Like they're cool, they're great, they're useful. They could also be better. And then there's like languages with significantly better macro systems, like the Lisps have significantly better macro systems in general, in my opinion, anyway. So like, I think Rust is not the best and it's not the worst, which is kind of how I feel about Rust in a lot of ways, honestly. It's a very practical language. It does a lot of what I want it to do. And then the rest is kind of like for future work. The Rust macros are great until you have to write one. I don't know. I think people find writing them easier than reading them. It's also like a lot of people don't handle their errors and stuff when they write Rust macros well. So like you can very easily end up in a situation where you've written a macro, it's working for whatever you're doing, and then you run into an error and it's just completely unreadable. Okay, so this does look like a mirroring. It looks like a mirroring on the x-axis It doesn't look like we're in the right position. There is a translation here happening too, because if it was just a rotation, I think it would be on one of the edges. So, will Bevy ever have multi-threading in the browser? I think somebody's working on that. I don't know what the status is, but I saw PRs going in for like the base support. So like eventually, yes. Does it today? I think that Bevy is on kind of like the leading edge of implementing it compared to a lot of other things. But it's not something you can just like flick a switch and get right now. But there is support going in and somebody is working on it as far as I'm aware. So the thing that's getting me is that this polygon is right and this polygon is wrong. So what can I do that's an easier polygon to figure out? Because this is doing like a very small x subtraction, which is fine. I do think it's an x-axis flip. Seeing this as a center point looks really weird though. The 2.5D like 3D illusion breaks my brain. But why am I... Let's do this. I think if I vec 3 new -1 1 1, I think I'll get a flip out of this. Maybe I'll bring up, oh, let me bring up the Bevy inspector that I disabled earlier because I was like, I'm not going to need this, and then immediately need it. What about a collision rotation checking system written in macros? It would take the same set of setup rules for procedural generation, wave function collapse type rule set. Either way could easily write. I think I would just write it in regular Rust, and or actually, if I was doing procedural generation in any way that I wanted to like actually use, I might write it as a compute shader. All right, so we're also getting 0 adjustment no matter what I do to that other spot. It makes me feel, I've done this before. There's something very similar called a polyline above it. And I keep editing the wrong thing and then being like, why isn't it changing? Yeah, so +1 for me. So let's find the entity. I don't know which entity this is. Did I log that out? A little hard to see things when I have it so blown up for stream, but that's fine. Tile positions, I think I removed those logs because I was like, this is working. Tiled, transform, tiled, state machine. This is our player. So let's blow this up for a second. I think this is the player, so this is Bevy Inspector eGUI if you haven't seen it. And I can move the player if I want to using this little dialogue. X, Y, whatever. By asking the question, it kind of answered my question. Perfect. I wouldn't use compute shader to check for valid collisions. I would use the compute shader to do the wave function collapse algorithm or whatever procedural algorithm we used, right? Because so the first implementation obviously would be in Rust. It would be on the CPU with a big enough like tile grid. It would be slow. So depending on how big, depending on how fast, We could take that algorithm and then move that algorithm into a compute shader, which is like designed to just do a billion things at once. So with a lot of procedural generation algorithms, you can actually move them to doing the work on a compute shader on the GPU and thus get it to complete much faster. That's what I was saying. For the actual collision, we would still be using like Bevy XBBD or something. And the issue right now is with my definition of where the colliders are supposed to be. Can you write shaders in Rust? Technically, yes, but I'm not aware of that project being particularly well supported at the moment. And I think the person, well, I'm not going to say that, but this is a project called Rust GPU. Theoretically, it allows you to write Rust and compile it to shaders, which is very cool. There's a lot to do is the way that I'll phrase it on this. And I don't think this is anybody's first priority. So I don't really anticipate this being like the way to write shaders anytime soon. But this is a proof of concept that proves it can be done. Maybe not to like the fullest extent of WGSL or something, but it's not impossible. Okay. Colliders. I should put extra component on these colliders. Tile position, tile flip. Yeah, scrolling through the giant list is silly. What can we look for? We can look for collider. Fuzzy match? Oh, this is looking for just the... Dang, that's looking for a specific entity. That's not what I wanted. So let's do a log out for these IDs so that we know which colliders are being created here. Collider ID here is what I want. And I'll just do a debug for collider ID. We only have 3 colliders in the scene right now. So this should give us like the ID of one of 3 colliders, which we can then go check. Yes, that's what I was trying to get at originally. By creating a set of rules about what collider can and cannot touch each other within macros, you can make a tool to tell you whether or not it is. Yes, but I don't think you need to do that with colliders, if that makes sense. Like if you're going to do wave function collapse, you're going to define like the way tiles can combine. I think you can do that in, or I think you'll need more information than just the colliders is kind of what I'm getting at. So I think you need to do that in a different way. So 36 V1, 37 V1. And then 33. I think 33 is the one that we want. Do we not have a 33? There's 33. 33 is a child. So this, I think, is the one that we want. If we can scroll down, check the transform, translation, rotation. So this is negative 3.5. So this is our y-axis here for this collider. You can see it going back and forth. So let's get that back to where it was, 3.5. Where's the children on this? I guess it's not. I guess it's a single thing. I mean, to solve your current problem of setting up new objects in the scene. Yeah, but like, what does it validate against except the code that I just wrote is kind of what I'm getting at, right? Like the translation from the way that Tiled has the data stored to the way that Bevy displays the data is the code that I'm writing right now, right? Like it is the code that I am dealing with. So that if I was going to do it in a compute shader or whatever, I still have to write the right code to check to make sure that these are in the right spot. So yeah. Like, I still have to write the code that I'm writing right now, whether it's in a compute shader or not. How do you keep the character in view if on the first or second floor? Like, goes up the ladder and stays on the second floor? It's there is no second floor is the secret. Right? Like, if you go up these stairs, look, I just went up the stairs. There are no stairs. There's no z-axis. Like, there's no I just walked in a diagonal. This is a 2D game, right? Like, the it's really kind of funny to explain because like you can just walk left and right up here, right? Whereas if I start down here and I walk directly up like this, it looks like I'm going upstairs, but I'm not actually going up anything, right? Like, I'm not. There's nothing here. It's literally just the diagonal. So like, I would have a collider over here to make sure that I wouldn't run off or something like that. I haven't decided what I'm going to do with stairs yet. I'm probably going to have a wall on the side of the stairs. How do you create the illusion in a 2D game? What do you mean by the illusion in a 2D game? You mean like we currently have? Okay, so we've got children, collider. Collider is not registered in the type registry, so it's not being shown. That's fine. Translation, rotation, and scale. It's not rotation. Let's just sanity check that, I guess. Oh, that's the wrong one to rotate anyway. Is it? I thought it was. This is 33, right? Yeah, 33. Oh, that was the wrong rotation. Why is that so long? What did I do? I don't know what I did here, but they're exceedingly long horizontally now. Okay, so this would be a rotation on the z-axis, but we can see that it's rotating effectively around the center point, which is good. So it's not a rotation, right? The mirroring around the y-axis is not correct. It's not like the right thing to do. Basically, like, turning this into 3.5 doesn't do anything for us. So I think that the mirroring has to happen on the points themselves. Just changing the y on that tile as you go up the stairs, right? No, it's the x and the y. Well, I guess, technically, if you're thinking about it, you can think about this direction as the isometric x-axis and this direction as the isometric y-axis. So in that sense, you're just walking up the x-axis. But in the actual coordinate system, which is like y is vertical and x is horizontal, you're doing x plus y. And I think we have the player entity, right? So actually, if I bring up the player entity, which I think is this one, let me look at the transform here. You can see that x and y are both moving. I don't know if you can see that. And unfortunately, I don't think I can zoom in on the eGUI stuff. But here you can see x and y moving because Bevy is y vertical, x horizontal. But our projection, the way the tile map is rendered, x is this like 45-degree angle or 30-degree angle or whatever. So we're actually moving x and y positive. I think it's just a reflection, but I think it's a reflection on its own axis, right? which means that we need to deal with the individual points and not actually the tile, if that makes sense. Because if we go back to 33 here, the tile entity is not the problem. The transform... Right, the scale doesn't get us there. So much fun mental math. Yeah, you know, I think that 2.5D, like the isometric games, are really fun to play. To program, it breaks my brain. So I do think that these are... They have to be mirrored on its own center, right? Is what I think needs to happen here. But our collider can't show up in Bevy GUI, so we're going to have to do a little bit of reconnaissance on that. How do you go through a door? You would have to enable it. So we currently don't have doors working, is the way that I would describe it. But like theoretically, I should walk behind this, or let's say I'm walking in from this direction, right? So theoretically, there's a collider here that prevents me from going in unless the door is open, and like maybe there's a sensor, or maybe there's or maybe this is at the edge of a tile or something like that. So if I'm like in the sensor and facing the right direction and I press the R1 button, then we switch the tile out for a different tile. The door opens because we have alternate sprites and one of them has an open door, and then you walk through. And we have z-indexing issues, but just kind of like pretend I walked through this instead of over it. Okay, so we've got this. This is a polygon. This is a polyline. I don't think just inverting this is right. Because the center is in the center of the tile on the bottom. There's a huge lag between chat and video. I don't have the ability to fix that at the moment. I'm going to try to fix it next week. I thought I had low latency mode on. I guess I probably don't. I'll have to check that setting. I started my stream through OBS, so it might not have taken the right setting instead of starting it through like the YouTube UI. Okay, so this. I don't think just doing negative works. Hit me up if you need help. Worked with all this times before. Appreciate that. Right now, my thing is this collider is mirrored on the y-axis for some reason, and I need to figure out where to put the right negation. I don't know that that fully fixes the issue, but seemingly does. We can probably debug this out too, right? Because like this polyline is getting collected. We will probably have to specify if I debug this. So let's do this. Let's take this. I don't know. We'll do points, whatever. Wait, why am I even collecting this? Like, oh, I guess, yeah. I don't think that this would work. I do want to see these values. Okay, let's log out these values because that's what I want to do. Let's call this new points. We'll let new points equal this collider situation. And then debug new points out. And this needs to be what, like the right type or something? I should probably get rid of the state machine logs too. The state machine logs are useful when I'm working on the state machine. Not as useful. Oh, it's a use after move, of course. Of course. That means we reference it here. And we're done. Hey, if you've got a brain cell and I've got a brain cell, then maybe we figure it out. Okay, so let's pull this up. We're still in the wrong spot, which is expected. But now we have the log out. So we've got a point at 0, 0. And then we've got 6432. I think this is supposed to be offset from the tile object, if I remember correctly. So negative 63 is our x-axis there. Zero, 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 zero to 0 to 63. 63 on the x-axis is... Oh, we have to do the same translation, I think. I thought I was already doing that, but I think we have to do it again for the points. I think I just forgot to do that. So we have to do this like x minus tile size thing for everything, I think. So like, I think this is actually this. And this is not going to be pretty because I've basically been running VS Code for too long and Rust Analyzer is not running anymore. So let's debug AB. And then let's do some extra stuff here. New A equals this. And then let new B equals, I forget what we're going to do for new B, and this will be new A, new B. So basically, it says it, or the tiled docs last time I saw, right? Tiled polygon coordinates. This is like not documented well. So objects, yada yada, custom placement, insert rectangle, but like point, ellipse, polygon, polygons, yada yada. First click determines the location of the object as well as the location of the first point of the polygon. Oh, that is awkward as hell. Okay. That's not how I thought that worked. Okay, interesting. Yeah. Tile to convert X minus tile to convert Y. Yeah. I don't know that that's exactly what I want to do here. The positioning here is based on the first click of how you defined the collider, which is bizarre. What am I supposed to do with like the first click? I guess everything is based off of that first position then, right? So like stuff isn't based on I guess I clicked it 0, 0 first in this case. So thankfully. Hold on, read it one more time. Okay, I can do that. When placing a polygon, the first click determines the location of the object, as well as the location of the first point of the polygon. Subsequent clicks are used to add additional points to the polygon. Polygons need to have at least 3 points, so they at least need to be a triangle because they need to form a shape. Click the first point again to finish creating the polygon. You can press escape to cancel the creation of the polygon. Yeah, what does first click mean? Exactly. First click, as far as I'm aware. So let me go to one that I'm not actively working on. But if I clicked on the polygon stuff, right, and I clicked here, and I drew a triangle, my understanding is that the position of this object is this spot up here that I clicked, which is a random offset from the tile in both directions. And the problem here is that it's not just a random offset from the tile, it's a random offset from the size of the tile as it exists in the image and not the grid. So the offset for the y-axis is actually going to be 400 because the images are 512 height, whereas the tiles in the grid are 128 height. That is such a weird way to define that. I guess there's a reason for it, obviously, or it wouldn't be like that. But so the idea here is that we have to first calculate the position of this first click, at which point the first point is always going to be 0, 0. Is that accurate? All right, let me just make sure that this code works so that we can compile. What did I do? Oh, I need the deref. Perfect. Okay. So we can compile now. I'm going to do a test run here. We're going to do exactly what I just said, but we're going to do it over on the thing that I was working on here. So if I draw a polygon here, right? I'm never in the window that I think I am inside of tiled. Okay, so if that is true, then I should be able to click what, like here and here, and we'll get like a vaguely straight line. And then I'll click right in the center of the top of that pole on the right and finish it. And I'm going to save this and I'm going to re-export the map. And you can see that this collider is just like all over our map, which is fine for now. We're going to deal with that. So if I run this, we should be able to see that polygon. Hey, Hukasu, how's it going? My brain cells are rubbing so fast, I'm actually getting hungry. That's hilarious. So this is the problem. Let's move our little character up. This is the problem. That is nowhere near where it needs to be. And that is the full 512 height of the tile. So we have an offset from this pole to that point effectively happening right now. So what does that mean? That means I'm only logging out new points. Oh, here we go. Old points. So I'm almost, I feel like that's always 0, 0. Where's the one that we're actually looking at? It says negative 128. I don't know if these calculations are right yet, so I'm not going to look at them. This is our y-axis. So this looks roughly correct. One question that I still have is if you click, is the first point always 0, 0? So then it would be 0, 0 plus the object offset and then calculated. Yeah, I'm getting breakfast and my ADHD meds if you're going to work in this cursed mental model. I should... that would probably help me too, honestly. A, B. So if this is 88, and that is supposed to be this tile here, right? It's supposed to be the top of that, which feels like it should be centered. So it's 88 off of the original position of the object. The original position of the object, we are not logging out because I have incredible foresight. So let's log that out. I need object here. So debug object. Usability goes out the window. What do you mean by usability goes out the window? So to be clear about what I'm doing right now, I'm effectively building the integration for Tiled that other people would theoretically use, right? Like I'm building a library infrastructure level piece of code right now. I'm not building like the game on top of it at the moment. So you always expect that code to be more finicky, especially when you start trying to account for all edge cases. Okay, so we've got x127 for the object. And then, oh, that's the wrong one. I got to look at the right one. I think this is our object. Okay. So we've got an x of 40, right? We'll call that 40 for a second. And then an x of 88. So that is 128, which is center. So it is object.x plus a, and then we do the calculation to figure out where it's supposed to be. So object.x plus a, and then this needs to be the combined coordinate. And then we basically need to do the same kind of thing with b, but I'm holding off for a second because I think it'll act a little bit differently. Didn't know you could have multiple items in debug. Would always wrap in a tuple. Yeah, you can definitely do multiple items in a debug. Actually, the other cool thing about debug is that it'll return whatever's inside of it. So instead of having this here, I can do, and this is another cool thing, if you type .debug here, and you use Rust Analyzer, it'll wrap it for you. So you don't have to go all the way to the beginning, open paren, all the way to the end, close paren. But yeah, so this will just return new points out of it, which is really, really cool. So you don't actually have to do what I'm doing here. And like have a separate thing. You could just debug the whole thing. All right, so I think we're back into roughly where we were. We don't have our y-axis handled yet. The offset is the combined offset, and then we do the calculation because we are in the center. So Bevy places things in the center, and Tiled places things in like the top left as an anchor position, which is like absolutely breaking my brain, honestly. Okay, so let's do the y-axis stuff. Would it be easy to make this game playable in an iPhone Safari browser? I think currently, maybe. iPhone Safari browser raises like my web development hackles. Like, that sounds rough. New video series, fancy schmancy debug hacks. That's funny. I don't know that I have enough debug hacks to make a video out of that. Maybe a short. Okay, so y-axis. Y-axis is based on the height of the tile, not the height of... where did our... Okay, this went all the way over here. This is the wrong spot for this. Is the other thing that I'm concerned about. yeah. The idea of getting anything to work in Safari, some people have called it the modern IE. I don't know that I would, but okay. So this is not in the right spot X-wise. That's kind of annoying. So we're 40. So this should be an X of 40. X of 40 on top of a tile that is centered here should be negative 80. And it is... what? Negative 88. I think that's right. For my mental model, that's right. For the actual rendering on screen, it is clearly not. Why is it not? Why is it off the side? It's off to the left about 40 pixels. So I'm doing the math wrong. Y is based on the height of the tile image, not the tile. Yes, exactly. Yes. Y is based on the height of the tile image, not the grid size. We're just trying to place this in the right spot right now, Miner. This green collider is coming from tiled. So if I open, I thought I was already in it. I am already in it. So if we look at this collider here, it's supposed to be on the base of this little fence, which is all the way on the left-hand side of like the tile. And when we talk about the tile image, which is what I was just saying, like it's a 512 pixel image. The grid size is 128 for the height. So there's a difference in coordinate system when we have to interpret the collider. On top of that, we have an issue where the position at which you click first is the first position of the first polyline coordinate. So depending on where you clicked in the editor, that is what defines this XY. At which point this is basically always 0, 0 because it is that first point. And then the others are based off of that original point as well, I believe. But you can see how this goes from 0, 0 to 510. That is the debug collider we have right here, which is in like way the wrong spot. Yeah. Have I tried asking nicely and praying to the gods of that crate? This is my crate, so unfortunately, I'm the one that I have to pray to. Unfortunately, this is a problem of my own making, and I am the one that needs to solve it. Y-axis inverted, object Y is 0. Yes, absolutely. I don't think it's... Is it 128 over 2? It is definitely inverted. You're absolutely right. So that is what we've got going on here. So if I pull this out and I put it here, and instead of tile size, object Y, I think it needs to be object Y plus B. Right? Like, I'm just using parentheses for my mental model, not for any mathematical reason. So we need to have the position, right? Let combined B equals object dot Y plus B, right? So this is in tiled coordinates at this point. Offset from top of tile image. So now we can replace this. This is combined B. So we need to do tile size.y. Tile size.y should be the tile image size. So it should be 512 minus whatever B is, minus X, right? Or Y in this case, but X in the sense of like the variable in the equation. So we should have at this point a coordinate that goes from bottom up. So if we have a coordinate that goes from bottom up, then we should subtract the grid size over 2. I think you're right. Then we need to subtract the grid size to bring it down a little further to place it in the right spot. The bottom corner of the triangle is not the bottom corner of the image, if that's what you're asking. The triangle is intentionally offset from the bottom. So this dot right here is not the bottom of the tile, but this dot here is the top. The really interesting one is this one, which is supposed to be right smack dab in the center of this top square here. Is it difficult to make Bevy games that run well on Android and Apple phones? I haven't shipped a lot of Android and Apple phone games, but there are people who are shipping them. One person is actually creating quite a bit of crates around it. So the way that I would say it is it's possible and getting easier because people keep releasing more crates. But look at our collider here. Let's get that image to show up correctly. Unfortunately, we're not working on the Z indexing issues right now. I made better progress. I made some progress. I don't know that it's better progress because look at it. It's just slightly offset. It's just slightly offset. Which means there's an X difference and oh, it's the width. Is it the width? Not the width. It's not the width because it's not half. What is it? What's that offset? It's in the right spot. It just needs to be the width of the, like, pole block to the left and up. But what size is that? That's not a size that we have. Yes. Oh, the whole image and the whole tile. No, the Atlas offsets for the rendering are fine. Um, that's all actually just being handled by Bevy, and it's why everything is rendering correctly. So the Atlas image is not, it's not an Atlas image offset. It is a individual tile image offset. But why is this in the wrong spot? And they both are too. They're both in the wrong spot. So we need to do something to subtract some element of X and add some element of Y. But I don't know what that is. Object.y plus b? Is it position of the first point relative to the tile? The first point is always at 0, 0 as far as I can tell. Oh, first point relative to the tile. I think I see what you're saying. You're saying that the coordinate I'm using is offset from that. Well, no, I think I'm doing that calculation for everything though. Are the offset? I got to read the docs again. First click determines the location of the object as well as the location of the first point of the polygon. Subsequent clicks are additional points. And it doesn't tell us whether these are offsets from the first point or offsets from anything else. 360 over 4. I don't know if that's a serious suggestion, but I would love to see TMX map format, object, polygon, space delimited X and Y coordinates. The origin is the location of the parent object. Okay. So the location of the parent object is that first spot. And then the coordinate system is off of that. So I think you're right, Xavier. I think you're right. By default, the first point is created as 0, 0. So it's always object X and object Y. Right? So if we have object X and object Y, because that is the location of the object, and then it's offset from there, so we do plus A or plus B or whatever, right? Then that should be the full coordinate inside of the tile image, right? So it should be the X from 0 to 256, and it should be the Y from 0 to 512. At which point we take that and we are subtracting half of the tile size for the X. So it is whatever coordinate from 0 to 256 minus 128, which gives us from negative 128 to 128. So that's all fine in my head. Yeah, they have to be offset from the first click since first and last are always 0. Yeah. Last is also 0 because it is first. That's the... How many angles can your character run at? 8. 1, 2, 3, or 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. It's generic though, so I could just make it as many as I want to, and I will make it more. we can do 16. I just need to export the sprite sheet correctly. I don't have a format for the sprite sheet yet. That's the other thing that I wanted to do at some point. Right now, the sprite sheet is kind of like hard-coded because I manually built it up. I do have a Python script here for rendering out individual animations from Blender. But I need to set up some kind of little workflow to make that right. Okay, so we've got this collider. I think in my brain this is working correctly. We have the original position, which is the object X and Y. We have the offset, which is A and B. The offset for the first point is 0 and 0. So we end up with object X and object Y. The object for every, or the combined coordinate for every successive point is based off of X and Y. So it should just be object X and object Y plus those coordinates. At which point we have a coordinate in the system 0 to 256 for the X and 0 to 512 vertically. We then need to take the X-axis and subtract half of the tile width from it so that we have a position from negative 128 to 128 to place it on the screen. None of that sounds like it is the right size. But we can definitely take a look. This element is 37, which is a child of 36. So we've got a transform here. The transform is negative 58, negative 18. I feel like it should be negative 64. Oh, that's the wrong one to look at. I need to find the right one first. That's not the right one. This is a polygon. Wrong size, but rightest approach. Yeah. As a former nuclear engineer, I can confirm the math for running a nuclear reactor is easier than this. Large part of quantum mechanics is easier math. Yeah. Well, this is like that small fiddly stuff, right? Where nothing matches up and you need to translate everything. And the issue for me is that the documentation doesn't make it clear what the actual coordinates are. So, yeah. And then Bevy takes everything and has its own coordinate system, which I'm much more familiar with. So that's fine. But Tiled doesn't seem to have great documentation like we were just looking at. Like, it's a polygon with a point at 0, 0. Okay. There's like no examples or anything, which is fine. It's like open source software and whatnot, right? Like I appreciate having it at all. But it's not the most fun to work with. Okay, let's do, where are we? This is 0, 0. Is this the right one? I should really just get rid of this switch for the moment so that I don't keep confusing myself. But I don't think I'm going to do that. Okay, object data. This is the one, the 40 in. So this is our triangle. Our triangle is then at 0, 0, and then 5, 10, which should be basically the bottom of the tile, and then 347. So let's start with X's, I guess. No, let's start with Y's, because Y's are off in a worse position. So we have Y equals 0, which is basically the top of a 512 image. And then we have basically the bottom, but not actually the bottom. And then something like slightly in the middle. So it should be like offset above, right in the smack dab of that. So what we're doing right now for the y-axis is giving us, this is the issue right there. 447 is so wrong. I keep doing this back and forth. But is it combined B minus the tile size? Is it like minus 512? That gives us not the right thing though, right? So like combined B is a number from 0 to 512. If we subtract 512 from that, then we get numbers from 0 to negative 512, which is not what I want. $448, 512 minus 128 over 2. You think that's it? But where is the... So you think we do like a tile size, or not a tile size, a grid size dot y? Oh yeah, that's what we're doing though. No, so that is what we're doing, right? Tile size is 512. Combined B is the position. Grid size is 128. So 128 over 2 is 64. That should be dead center. Right? If I debug this, I'm going to make this a little bit smaller. I think I'm going to get rid of that switch in a second too. And I'll replace it back so that I don't have to keep scrolling. So one collider, this is not our collider. No, this is the one. This is the triangle. So the triangle then, we're getting new B as 447, which is what we were seeing before. Actually, I don't know why I added this debug. It's the same debug. Tile size, combined B. Let's do this all at the same level. So let's do tile size, grid size, and then also combined B, probably. Debug combined B, which I think we are already debugging as the result, but I'll put it in like that. I should have checked that before the stream, honestly. I was like, I'm going to place a bunch of colliders today. And then I placed one and it was in the wrong spot. Yada yada. Okay, here's our triangle. So we've got tile map size 512. We've got grid size 128. A and B are 0. And then that puts us at 0. So that is incorrect. Because that is too high, right? So it's the object dot y is 0, which for us is in center, but I think is actually, that's the issue, that now that I'm thinking about it. X-axis plus y-axis over 8? I don't know what you mean by that. Oh, you mean like unit? Like this spot here is supposed to be like 1 1 or whatever. Yeah. Okay. I got rid of my logs for some reason. So if we have 0 and we have 0, that 0 is not the right 0. That 0 is top. So 512 minus this should give us 512. Minus 128 is not the right, or 512 minus 64 is not the right position. Wait, no. Yeah, so 512 is top. I think that actually is the right position. 512 minus 164 should give us 448. That should be 448, right? No, it's all good. You're good, Steve. I'm clearly doing a great job with with math this weekend. Either way, I'll have this fixed for next stream, and we'll continue with placing colliders and running around and stuff. Which we could still do, actually. We could just abandon the math for the moment. Where is my collider? Yada yada. That's not the one. This is the one. So here's our stuff. And I would expect this size to be 448. Because it should be 512 minus 64, right? So the combined B translates into 448. Yeah, okay, so that is the right spot. It is translating into something incredibly high, though. This is also 128, 256. I think it's the right size, which is good. But it's in way, way, way the wrong spot. Why is it in way, way, way the wrong spot? Are we not adding it to the right? Because this math looks correct. 447, negative 63, and then 99 puts it up above. So these Y indices are correct. Absolutely correct. The reason they are not in the right spot is because I'm trying to also use the transform here, and maybe these should just be 0, 0 because we're already doing the math here. This is also one of the things that I was doing, where I feel like the transform should propagate from the spatial bundle to these points. There we go. Exactly in the right spot. Sorry. Yeah. I know it's also hard to follow when I'm just like, hey, this little fiddly bit of math and this little fiddly bit of math, and like I'm confused, so I'm not explaining it correctly. This is what we were trying to do. We were trying to place the colliders in the right spot, and they are being placed in the right spot now. So now we should be able to draw arbitrary colliders and have them be in the right places. I hope you all enjoyed this dive into fiddly little 2D isomorphic collider math bits. I don't know who would have, but I hope it worked out. Okay, so what else do we have here? We have one of the doors, right? We have a closed door, and it is... Ooh, which door is it? I need to run the game again to figure out which door we... Oh, no, I don't need to run the game because I'm in the tile editor. So top right door. So top right door, I think is this one, right? So if we go here, and then we polygon again, and I do from like here to here to here, which means that if we match perspective, that dot is here. So theoretically, if we were going to draw a square to represent that corner, that would be the square. And if we did this again here, I don't want to do it like that. I'm going to follow this line up until it's intersecting here. That's not exactly where it needs to be, but it doesn't matter really right now. So now we've got these two colliders for the two poles. And then if we follow this line through, we would have an additional like this. And effectively, this would be our like door collider, right? It would be the combination of a couple different colliders, and it would just kind of prevent you from going through this door until the door itself opened. And the open door is, I want to say it is, actually, I don't know which door is this. Is it this one? Or is it this one? Does it matter? Are they both the same? I think it's this one. So theoretically, the colliders we did here. I don't know if we can copy paste. I'm going to try. Copy this. Go over to this door. Paste. Drag into place. Not quite the same. And then this collider wouldn't be there even. And I think this collider... I think that collider's in the wrong spot in the other one, but that's fine. So like theoretically, if we did this and we did an export, then we should go into the game. I think I am drawing the collider on the bottom edge of the door, right? Oh, you mean the open door? I think the open door probably... I don't know. I haven't decided on the open door. But now you can see the colliders here. So theoretically, this would then prevent me from walking through it, even though the z-indexing is off. Like I should be behind this door, or more accurately, I should probably be here, trying to go through, and then my feet will collide here. So let's do that next, actually. Let's do a collider for the player so that they can't get through this door. I'm just getting rid of a couple of these debugs because leaving debugs strewn about is something I will probably want to re-enable when I do this again later, and then also not what I want to do at this particular moment. Okay, state systems, triggers, player, player state machine. I mentioned it at the beginning, but I also turned on the Clippy warning for no docs. So I'm going to go through here and write a bunch of docs for all this stuff, and these warnings will then go away, right? Like I do a triple tick here, and now cargo doc will pick this up, and the state machine is considered documented. Which is something I really like, honestly, about Rust. So that's controller. Where do we spawn player? Here's player. So I think player probably has a collider That's probably an ellipse. I actually don't know what this should be. I'm also very curious if I'm going to have to change these to be perspective, like in the projection. Config debug with debug. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I could totally do that. That would totally work. I could also just use, so the other thing is that, let me just put in some arbitrary values here for a second. Let's make this 20. So the other thing is that this doesn't need to be a debug. We've got these infos logging out here, and I can turn those on and off. So if I kill this and I do like rust slog equals, what gets rid of infos? Let's do debug, actually. This is a better demonstration. So if I do rust log equals debug and I run this again, what this does is it turns on additional logging that already exists here. So I actually don't need that config because that config already exists in the logging infrastructure. Right? And this is all wild, right? This is all a bunch of stuff. You can see how much stuff like the debug logger logs out. So we've got Bevy window system, no windows are open exiting. This is after we've already hit exit. And then we can say, here's the surface that we're rendering to, the color targets, swap chain stuff, present frames, like removing swap chain texture. Like there's a whole bunch of extra information in here, along with like buffer IDs for stuff. And I think that this present frames is actually the thing we'll see the most because it happens every frame. But yeah, there's like that already exists actually. So I don't need to do the config thing because that is already a thing that works. Okay, so this ellipse is wrong, right? And yes, I do know the Z index is wrong. So the character should be behind this door, but two things. One is that I haven't set up like these layers yet. Like I kind of just have like floor and then like arbitrary other stuff, but like all of this is floor. So like it's everything. If I wanted to, I could take the thing from floor, right? Okay, so I have this now. Let me erase this and replace it, but place it on the switches layer. Actually, not the switches layer, the extras layer maybe? I don't know where I'm going to put this exactly, but now I can actually go in and find my floors, and on my floors layer, I can put a floor here. And we can save that, export it. And that will change like the Z index issues. Well, I allow the character to walk off ledges. I think that what I'm going to do is not have ledges in general. But TBD, basically. I don't know what the levels are going to look like yet. But if we go all the way over here, you can see now that the way this triangle here is placed is different compared to this door, compared to the floor. Like these are all on different layers now. They're not necessarily on the correct layers. That's a different issue. It's also something I need to fix. But anyway, the collider for the player then needs to be something... I don't know. Let's go with like, I think 10 was approximately right. I could have just done that in the inspector. I don't know why I did that in code. And then this probably needs to be a little bit lower, honestly, because I want it to be near the feet. So it's possible that instead of having this on the player itself, this is a child of the player and offset a little bit because we already have a transform that we're working with. So this is a spawn. Let's do dot add child player collider. And player collider is just something I'm going to do right here. So let player collider equal commands dot spawn this collider dot ID, because that's what we want to be able to add it as a child. And then this is going to be a tuple because we're going to add a transform to it. Transform from XYZ. And this is going to be like 0, -10, I don't know, 1, we'll say for the Z index. So should be able to rerun that. Has anyone reverse engineered The Sims for source code? I don't know the answer to that. Did I not add this to the player collider? Add child, player collider. Oh, you know what this needs to be actually? Spatial bundle from transform. So this is actually not a bad thing to bring up. But you see how the collider didn't move with the player? There's a whole transform propagation infrastructure behind the scenes. So we work with transforms, but there's also global transform. So now you can see that it's working with the player here. We don't have collision enabled yet between these two things, so I can still walk through it. But the idea here is that if you look at any given entity that has a transform, so this is a transform down here, it also has a global transform. And there's this whole infrastructure that Bevy does behind the scenes to update basically the transform of like where things are. So if you only add the transform component, that infrastructure isn't like enabled. But if you have the global transform and some other things, then it is. So that's why we use spatial bundle here, because spatial bundle has a bunch of extra stuff. So spatial bundle here has visibility, the inherited visibility. So if you like disable the viewing of something at a higher point in the tree, it propagates down. The view visibility, the transform, and the global transform. So you as the user are supposed to set transform, and global transform is completely managed by Bevy. Okay, so actual collision. I do want to do collision layers at some point because you can see if I'm going to draw a bunch of colliders like this on this door, for example, those colliders shouldn't be intersecting. Like I never want those to be like, oh, I reported a collision with myself. So I think the right way to do that is what? We could write our own collision logic, which would be a little bit awkward. I think we would want to do collision layers if that were the case. We could also use Bevy XPBD's like physics stuff. I don't think we're going to really have any physical stuff happening. But we could make these like static bodies and stuff. They don't move anyway. So I don't know what I want to do there. I don't know what I want to. Maybe rustlog warn IV equals debug or something. Yeah, I don't really need the debug stuff for the vast majority of the stuff that I'm doing, I don't need debug. But I could leave those extra debugs in there if I wanted to. They just aren't well thought out, so that's why I was using DBG. Okay. What do we want to do here? How do we want to do the collisions? I think we're doing manual control over the player, right? So our player system, I think, is going to want to do different things based on what's colliding with it. So let's say when we're running, maybe. I don't think we are doing actual movement here. So we'll just put it in here for now. And this is going to be colliding entities. It's just going to be a shared reference to colliding entities. Colliding entities comes from Bevy XBBD. Colliding entities. And then I think like if colliding entities is empty. I remembered is empty this time. I always forget is empty. If it's empty, then we move. Otherwise, we don't. And I think that this is basically a quick, hacky, cheap way to get the player to stop moving if they have run into one of these colliders. This is kind of perfectly timed as I was playing Diablo 4 and curious what building an ISO game action RPG would be like. Cool. Yeah, I think that I definitely think I broke the movement. This is all layered 2D. It's all 2D. It's all 2D. It looks 3D. It's all 2D. There's only an X and a Y. It's only an XY grid. There is no Z. Zero Z. Well, there's layering for Z, but like it's a 2D game. Yeah, 2.5D. I bet it would be a lot easier, Miner, if the integration with Tiled was already built. So what you're seeing is me building the what would be like Bevy ECS Tiled, as well as building the game on top of that, and that's why it feels difficult, I think. What was I doing? Okay, if colliding entities is empty, then we can do the distance. This did not work for whatever reason. So let's... I wonder if we're colliding... This is the player, right? Entity, texture atlas, facing, running, transform, colliding entities. No collision. And colliding. My guess is that it's just constantly colliding. You think with is empty, no collision or no movement at all is allowed? I feel like... you're right, but I should see some logs here, and I don't. So right, like if we're in game and I'm running, this system should be running. If there was a 3D game, it would be much easier to see the Z-axis. Yes, absolutely. Here you have to create the illusion of the Z-axis and the placement of the image layer. Absolutely. That is definitely one of those things that I'm just going to have to figure out. I do think that I can just set the Z-index for a lot of things. I think so like all of the layers that I build in Tiled will probably be built very specifically to be layered like that with a static Z. So like the floor will be the base layer, and then there will be like walls and doors on top of that, or like any little placement things on top, and whatnot. And that will all be static. And then the issue will come when I'm running around as the player. What is the Z index of the player compared to those things? What am I doing? Transitioned is empty. See, this is not logging out either of these things. So if it's empty, there's a collision. No, I think I just wrote the log wrong. Oh, you know what? You know what the issue is, y'all? It doesn't have colliding entities. I think I need to do this. Right, because colliding entities, I think colliding entities is per collider. I have to look at the docs. XPBD 2D. But basically we're not iterating there at all. Colliding entities. A component that stores all the entities that are collided. This component is automatically added for all entities with a collider, but will only be filled if contact reporting plugging is enabled, which it is by default. So this has to be on the collider, not on the parent. So we're going to do children here. I think. I think I'm gonna do children here. And then I'm gonna do query colliding entities. And this is gonna be a query for just colliding entities. We haven't labeled this at all. So this is just a query. This is basically like a database query, right? Like it's a, we're creating a thing that we can do .get on with an entity to get it. So this is going to be children. And then this is going to be query colliding. Well, this is not going to be that, but I'm just going to make a variable here, query colliding entities .get children 0. So this is going to be really hacky for the moment. So this is going to do a get. It's going to be a result. This is only running on the player, hopefully, and we only have one child right now, which is the collider. So this would work. And then we get the colliding entities, and then that's what we have to call this. And that, I believe, should work. And my debugs are wrong. You're absolutely right. I know it's ahead of me. What was the basic idea of viewing something the player could see behind a building? The basic idea, you mean like translucency, right? Okay, now we're moving, and now we can't move past these things. Dashing completely breaks it, just as a heads up. Because we didn't implement anything for dashing, but you can see how we get like trapped on this. I don't know that this is the right hitbox. You can see that I actually still have some issues because like it is technically colliding, even though I'm trying to run away. But for now, we can dash to get out of that. And then interesting that those don't count. So we're only colliding with Rex right now, which is interesting. I don't know what the implications of that are. We're colliding with this rectangle, but we aren't colliding with that polyline. Viewing something the player can see behind a building. Basically, if you are z-indexed behind something and and you overlap, you can raise the transparent or lower the transparency. Raise the transparency? Make it more transparent. And then you'll be able to see it behind it. Wouldn't it be better if it's inverted? The query with colliding entities having parent instead of the big query having children. The query with colliding entities having parent. I just did it this way because I'm already querying for a bunch of stuff here. You're saying that we should do like this, and then we should iterate over the colliding entities. Well, this needs to be a shared reference. You're saying that we should get the ID of the colliding entities, and then we would have to iterate over the colliding entities to look for the right parent ID. I don't know that that buys us anything. Oh, that's what you were trying to say. Once you're colliding, there's no way of backing off. Yes, absolutely. You're correct about that. There needs to be a collider on the feet so the image layer can change in front of or behind the other image. Yeah, well, it's like so it's a 2D game, right? So you can think about this, right? At least this is what I currently believe. You should be able to walk through things like this, right? But realistically, the projection is such that this should be fine. And like, this is not standing on that button, right? This is really what I'm trying to do right now. You're not standing on the button right now. You're standing on the button now. So really what this is doing is the colliders have to be mapped to this projection, to the 2D plane, which is why I'm putting it at their feet, quote unquote. It's not really their feet, right? It's the X and the Y of an ellipse in the 2D plane, but it's at their feet. And that way, when you're at this button and you're like, I'm standing here, I'm not on the button. It shouldn't be triggering the button right now. Now it should be triggering the button. That's the idea. And I assume that this will get more complicated over time, right? Like I anticipate that one collider at the feet of my player is not necessarily what I want for everything. That said, I do not have in my head how I want the all of this logic to work. Technically, this is intersecting the whole way. So there's some like really basic stuff we could do, like if you're pointed away from it, let you run. Or push you out a little bit, like keep you away from the collider. I don't know what the optimal solution here is. Like, I don't know how other people do it in isomorphic games, or isometric games. I'm not really worried about it either, though. I'm happy to have some collision just working at the moment. The polyline is not working, though, which is really interesting. Can the player ever walk past the ladder? What do you mean by walk past the ladder? There's no colliders here. So right now you can just walk over everything. Right? Like I'm not preventing anybody from doing anything. What we could do on the ladder here is when you get here, maybe you engage with the ladder or something. And then literally what it's going to do is move like very slowly, just vertically. And it'll play a climbing animation. So it'll be like you're climbing and then you'll be on the floor. But here, yes, you're right. If I walked this way, I should be behind the ladder. And that is a combination of the y-axis and the z-axis. So it's a combination of the layering and where my player is on the screen. So if I'm here, I should largely be in front of it. If I'm here, I should largely be behind it. but I don't know how I'm going to fix the Z indexing yet. That is TBD. Don't they test this with rays instead of ellipses? What do you mean by that? Like whether there's going to be a collision? Like, yes, we will have ray tests in the game. Like if we wanted to have a, I don't know, like in Hades right now, for Hades 2, you can place like a circle on the ground around you. There's a variety of reasons to place a circle on the ground around you, whether it is like a swing attack or like just a, you know, magic incantation right below you or any number of things. But if there's something between, maybe we want to raycast like through something to see if it'll hit and whatnot. Make it a game feature and play as a ghost and remove all colliders. I could demo the transparency in eGUI Inspector. You're absolutely right. The unfortunate part is I'm not behind anything right now. Although I think I could force myself behind something. So I think this is the player. Down here somewhere. Idling. Okay, so let's do transform. Z index. I placed that on the same layer, didn't I? Okay, I guess let's keep that at 1. The other thing is that the player isn't integrated with the stage at all. So like, yes, we have entities, but the rendering is being done separately. I don't know offhand which. I'm just going to modify a bunch of stuff here. Tile map stuff. Colliders. This is the whole tile map. I could just put a different component on this to find it easy, but yeah, I've spawned enough stuff where like manually looking for it is kind of kind of a lost cause. Where's the collider? That's our tiled map. And this is just like the basic Bevy Inspector eGUI. Like it's just anything that is in your system can show up in whatever way you want. But there is no like specifics. There's no fanciness to it. It is literally just okay. I don't know which one it is. But yes, you can absolutely. I think I moved some stuff over here. I don't know which one the door is either, is the other problem. Oh, there's a tile. Okay. So what? Can we alpha this? That doesn't help because it doesn't show anything, but like that's the idea. Using a name component, I never use name components. I don't know why. You're absolutely right though. The one thing is that we won't have a name for these. Oh yeah, also you can definitely like if you're looking for actually working with Bevy Inspector eGUI, you can do plenty of stuff. I am doing like the quickest World Inspector plugin here, which just kind of dumps everything there. It's totally fine. The World Inspector plugin is just like everything. It's like anything that's registered with the type registry that happens to be available for assets, for resources, and for entities. You can also just do resources or like your own resource. So like if I had specific options here, you can build your own UI here for any particular thing. You can build up like your own UI in a grand sense, and things like that. I've literally done 0 to make that easier for myself at the moment. Okay. Name component is the right move. Let's do this. Name player. I always forget to name things. I just never do it. I usually end up with like a marker component like this, and that's usually good enough for me. Is empty as not found? What did I do? Prelude. I turned this into a tuple. Oh, I turned it into the parent and I didn't. Yeah, I don't know that using parent here buys us anything, because we still have to iterate over that and then go and find the other thing. And if I wanted to do direct access, I could. I mean, you're absolutely right. Like things should generally be tagged with name. But oh, right. The player isn't spawned yet. The player has to be spawned before it shows up. But yeah, so you can see here, it says player now, which is wonderful. Yeah, I mean, I could conditionally turn them on and off. I'm not concerned about memory usage at this point in the project. Collider or children 0 is still the collider if there's a name component. Let's talk about children. So there are entities and there are children, right? When you spawn something, you're creating an entity and attaching components to it. So when we do command spawn for the player, we get an entity and there's a bunch of components like attached to it horizontally. When you add a child, you're adding another entity as a child. So these are not children of anything. They are associated with the entity that is a child. Opening doors would be cool. Unfortunately, these polygons aren't quite working right now. We don't have like polygon and Bevy XPBD, do we? I know I'm using polyline. Also, for anybody that wants to think about raycasting, raycasting is around too. We could totally do that. Circle, compound, cuboid, distance to point, half space. This is what we're currently using. There's regular polygon, which is not necessarily what we have. Our parent-child mostly used for relative transforms. Transforms do propagate. So you've got a parent and a child, and the parent has a transform. The child starts at the center of the parent, not at the center of the world. if it has a transform component. If it doesn't have a transform component on the parent, then the child is placed relative to the world. Yeah, and also things like visibility, recursive deletion of children, so you can despawn recursive instead of just despawning, and it'll take everything out. Tri-mesh. We could actually get more specific now that I think about it. I think I'm going to do this off stream. This is not this tri-mesh thing is not something that I'm going to do on stream. We spent enough time doing math today. But we could be more specific if we know that there are like 3 points. We can do a triangle. Polyline, project point. If solid is true, given the point inside the collider, projection will be the point. Otherwise, the collider will be treated as hollow. Shape? Nope. I ask because I saw an example in the cheat book where they had the soldiers of a squad as children of the squad instead of giving each unit a component for what squad it was in, for example. Yeah, I think that's just a design choice. Like you can do whatever you want, is what it turns into. And yes, you can have children of the squad be the squad members, or you can have them be completely separate and have components on them. Or you could do both, honestly. It really just depends on what you want and how you want to organize your game. Why don't we add a collider on one side of the tiles or all tiles? You mean on the tiles that are merged together? So like if we put it on the floor here, right? If we put edges on all of the floor tiles, for example, you wouldn't be able to get from one floor tile to another. So we would have to do some detection of like, are these next to each other and should we spawn the collider? Which theoretically we can do. It just takes a bunch of code and isn't necessarily something I want to do right after doing all that math stuff. Just organization, maybe squad entity probably does not update the position. Yeah, so if the squad entity doesn't even have a transform, all those squad members basically act independent, except for the fact that you can then query for the squad and iterate over the children. But you could do the same thing if you just had a component on all of the squad members. So it's like, however you make it work in your head, that's all that is. It doesn't have anything... I mean, it has implications, but it doesn't have like... There's no right answer, if that makes sense. I would probably do component-based, but the person that writes the cheat book is also very informed, so who knows why they made that choice. And I don't know which page you're talking about. The fence just blocked the left side of the tile? What do you mean? Oh, yeah, I mean, for that, theoretically, we could do that. Yeah. I think the polygon is fine there, though. Right? I think the confusing part to me is that we have a polyline, but we don't have the collision working, which feels really weird. So in our systems, when we query colliding entities, if it's empty, we move. If not, we don't. So here we could do like colliding entities. I think we can just log this out. Perfect. We'll just log that out. You think doing that will be simpler? Why would it be simpler though? The other thing is that the fence has width, right? Like it has a width and a height and a like a position on the screen that it is. And yes, this could block you from going from here down if we just had the one line on the edge, but it should also block you from like going up, if that makes sense. And it should block you at a different position going up than it blocks you going down. Let's see what we got in our colliding entities. Tile maps. It's going to end up being something I actually have to iterate over, isn't it? Yeah, so those aren't even showing up as like being collision. Don't have to think about the shape, but we have to think about the shape for a lot of other things. So thinking about the shape for this is basically a simple case of everything else. Like, for example, this switch has to have the same thing. And this is not going to be a polygon. It's not going to be a rect. It does need to be, well, I mean, like, TBD. But that's why I was looking at other collider options. Interesting that this doesn't ever register on a polyline. I wonder if there's something about polylines that I am thinking of in a wrong way. Round, rectangle, cuboid, rectangle. Like, yeah, the issue with this is like, we would need to make it and then rotate it. And that's not the way we're getting the data in from tiled. Tiled doesn't give us... Tiled doesn't make it easy, in my opinion, personal opinion, to draw these squares. Because if you take a square and you put it down here and you draw it, you then also have to like rotate it. And it rotates around the top left. Like it's not actually a rotation around the center. So right now I'm actually just trying to avoid rotating stuff because this is wild. I don't want to deal with this. Like, why is it rotating around the top left corner? I mean, like, I'm sure that's the way it works in some other system. And that's why it does it like that. But like, I just don't want to deal with that at all. This is a template. That's a polygon, ellipse, point, rectangle. Yeah, also they're not square, but more parallelograms. You would have to be able to skew them, and I don't think you can skew them. Like the tiled editor is actually pretty restrictive. And you bounce out to polylines very quickly, in my opinion. So we don't really get to do that if we want to use the UI. That's the key here as well. If we want to use the UI to define the colliders, which I kind of do, then we don't get to use all the nice enums because they basically are all going to be polylines or polygons. And we don't have like polygon in XPBD as far as I'm aware. There's a bunch of ways to combine things and whatnot, but I don't think we have. So the question that I have is, why is this polyline never showing up as a colliding entity? Maybe there's an issue about it somewhere. Polyline colliding entities. Creates a collider with the polyline. Vertices into iter. shared shape polyline, vertices, indices. Really, the other thing we should be doing is closing this with the index and not creating an additional point. What about convex hull decomposition? I don't know that I am familiar with convex hull decomposition. Line segment, oh, okay. In geometry, convex polygon, boundary of a convex set. This means that the line segment between 2 points of the polygon is contained in the union of the interior and the boundary. So it's a simple polygon. It doesn't self-intersect. I think that that will always be the case, minus the fact that I'm adding that end right now. Okay, cool. So convex hull would work for us. But it takes a vector. Oh, a vec of vectors. And these are vec2s in our case? Yeah. Okay, cool. Yeah, convex hull might work, actually. That's a great suggestion. Polygon. In which case, we don't need extra. So let me just take this. Drop it here. We're so far over on the x-axis on this code editor. New points, yada yada. This just needs to be points dot iter with no chain. So we can kind of comment that out for a moment. So new points is this stuff here, and then this is not a polyline. We want a convex hull. And I think we just give it the... Did something wrong. Yeah, I am aware that there are shapes for which it becomes an issue. Okay, collider, convex hull. Match has incompatible types. Polygon points. Collider spatial bundle. Collider spatial bundle. Collider spatial bundle. Expected collider. Found option. Oh, convex hull needs to get unwrapped, doesn't it? Interesting. That's cool too. So we can actually like log out a warning if we have created something that actually cannot be turned into convex. That's actually really nice. Hey, and now it works. Thank you for the suggestion, Xavier. So that all works. And then we can't go through the door. We can't get out of the door either because we're colliding with it. Project Free Sims is intended to be an open source recreation of The Sims 1. Interesting. That's pretty cool. So we've got collision working for all of our little things. Clearly, there's some issues here. This is the dash mechanic, which honestly, this is what should happen for the dash mechanic. The dash mechanic is meant so that you can go through colliders like this. There will be probably walls and stuff that we want to prevent that for. But for just like a regular convex collider on a tile, we do want you to be able to go through it like that. Now, the implementation is incidental right now, which is bad. But the way we actually do that in the future is probably going to be a raycast and not a incidental thing. I know continuous collision detection is being worked on for XBBD. I don't think that it is currently implemented. Cool. Do we have... Let's place one of these boxes in. Where's the box? What's in the box? The other thing that's cool is these like arrows and stuff. Like go that way. Let's see. Box, 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 box. Here. And then I'll place this. I don't know. Let's put it like over here. And we'll go back to floors, and I need this to be floor. These ramps we placed earlier are on the floor tile, so let me put those down here, get rid of this, remove these, and place more floors. The other thing I want to do is see if we can do a sensor. That would be cool. So that's that. Turn the extras back on. Now those are there. This does create a Z indexing issue here, as you can see. But I'm not terribly concerned about that at the moment. Oh, Tiled just crashed. All right, let's reopen. Recent projects. An error occurred while opening the project. Sick. Love that. Assets, test map. This one. Reveal in Finder. Open. And it opened. Yay. Again, Tiled is not my favorite editor. Okay, so we've got this. We do need to edit the tile set. Embed, export, edit tile set. Which one of these do we want? I want this one because that's the one we used. Let's get in there and let's do another one of these. So I'm going to do a little bit more of a zoom in here. And we'll go from this point to this point to this point to... I'm trying to match the slope of the line with the other one, which I think I just messed up a little bit, but I'm not too concerned about that. So save that, file export. And we'll bring this in. I have never played that game. I do not know what that game is. Okay, so collider here, working. Z indexing, not working. Where did I place the... That is on extras. So there is like... I really do need to fix those Z indexing issues at some point. And it bugs me that they're random. But that's fine. So we've got this collider here. Technically, we should be behind the box right now. And then we should be able to, like, I don't know, push the box or something. Convex is a classical term in physics collision detection, even in 3D. Yes, absolutely. So this is functioning as intended, I think. It does look a little bit weird if you look too close at the idea that, like, the character is kind of running against this box, but they're also, like, holding this stick out in front of them. So I think that's just an art direction choice. Just, like, don't make it obvious that The other thing is that when this player is running, they kind of lean forward way further than they need to. You can see the little thing. And that's just because I didn't do these animations. So like for the dash, they jump forward instead of being in place. So it's a little awkward. Would they be random if you limited the collision drawing tool to 4 angles only? What do you mean? Oh, the collision drawing tool isn't the issue. For the z-indexing, all of the collision stuff is actually fine. At this point, all the math is correct. All the places are good. Running into them works. The colliders are not the issue. We are never going to z-index colliders, if that makes sense, right? Like, we may be able to walk through this one this way and not the other way, but that's a totally different thing. That's not z-indexing. The issue is the rendering of the tile map is done in a shader, and they are batched. And when our character stands here, for example, due to the combined Y index and Z index, we should be able to set the Z index of the player to be behind this box. And then we'll take this box and we'll turn it like slightly transparent or something if we know you're standing behind it. But Bevy can handle the Z indexing. I just haven't done a deep dive into how that's actually going to work. But I believe that all we need to do is set the Z index correctly in all places, and then we'll be fine. Easter egg when you hit 7 and it quotes what's in the box. 7 what? Level 7? Also, hey, Alan. So collision is working. The dashing just puts you through it, which is fine. We'll consider that a bug for later. Z indexing a bug. I don't know that we're even going to have ladders in the game, if I'm being perfectly honest. Again, this is like a prototype tile set. It looks great and like it's working like it's supposed to when you run up this ramp. What are the random numbers in the code? You're talking about this? These are not random numbers. I believe those are the indices of the texture atlas or the IDs of the tiles in a different form. But this is tile data. This is like, if you look at the map, I don't think I can zoom out because I didn't decide to pause the camera system. But if you look at the map is effectively a square that is kind of like slanted into a diamond shape. So the x-axis is actually this like diagonal up and down. This is positive x, that's negative x. This is positive y, that's negative y, like that kind of thing. So this square of numbers is the tile data. Zeros means there's no tiles. 97, 98, 115, etc. are different tiles for this layer, and so on. The randomness of the Z indexing is influenced by a number of things. One of them is the chunking. So, where is this? We have a chunk size here. And let's say I took this away completely, which I believe does 0, 0. If we do that, it behaves differently. Yeah, if things have equal Z index, then that is, I don't know, people call it a bunch of different things, but basically it's like Z index fighting, right? So when Bevy decides to render something, you're not seeing it flicker right now, which sometimes it does, but the thing that happens if things have the same 0 index is they kind of fight for position because neither is definitively in front of the other. We luckily aren't seeing flickering here. But yeah, anytime we boot up and we chunk stuff and whatever, it is happening in a non-deterministic way. And it's somewhat influenced by this chunk size. So like, I think this is chunking by X. I should have pointed out the the thing there. But you can see that that's not there anymore. Really, the thing that changed when I added that chunking is this no longer looks like it's overlapping the other tiles. Yeah. So there's a whole bunch of stuff here that I still need to do in that sense. This is just a random chunk ordering. I guess I'll make this match the comment for now, but like, I don't know what we do if we do 12 and 12. I think that's the whole map at that point. But yeah, there's definitely like, there's stuff happening with the z-index, and the z-index of the player doesn't change at all. So it's always in the same position. And that's just because I haven't gotten around to it yet. Cool. 1042. I think we can look at making this a sensor. So I think I can get rid of this collider, this extra debug collider now, which I'm going to do. So let's get rid of that. I think it's on this one. Yeah. Let's get rid of this little thing here. And save that. And then this, I think we have the ability to add custom properties here. Let's see, bool, color, float, file, int, object, string. I don't love those options. I wish I could define my own enum. I'm just gonna do like sensor true here. And if we look at our output, there's something wrong with my file watching there. The notifier loop is panicking for some reason. If we do that, then we have this shape. This is object data. What else do we have here? We have color and nothing else. I don't think that's correct. So this is object layer data. I think object layer data is where that comes from. So RS tiled creates IO. I'm going to go through a 3-click to get to the docs. And then object layer data. I think this is supposed to have, I guess not. This only has color and then objects. So object data, maybe? Name, user type, XY, rotation, visible, shape, properties. Okay, so it's going to be properties. This is where we're getting object. So properties is a hash map for object in collision. So we should be able to debug object.properties. Maybe. Maybe property value doesn't implement debug. That would be really unfortunate, but very possible. And then hopefully we'll get sensor out here. So we ran it. Let's see. Properties, empty. Empty, empty, empty. Empty, empty. Let's do... I don't see any properties. I didn't export the map, did I? It is important if you are making changes to then save said changes. Can't imagine why that would be useful, but you know, some people like to do it. Properties, there we go. And now we get sensor with a string value of true. This is going to be a little bit awkward to deal with. And then C is collider, right? So I think we can do this way down here. Collider ID is this, and then... So we've got object.properties. We'll do object.properties dot get sensor. What do I want to do here? Takes notes. Object properties get sensor. This is going to be an option, right? Option property value. Dot map. Property value. Excuse my formatting here, which is just going to be atrocious until I restart VS Code. Property value. Property value can be one of many things. If let string value true equals property value, then we return true. Else false, right? That is totally going to be an issue. Property value, string value, maybe? And this is going to be actually a string, literal, which we don't want to match on. Just fine. I don't know what this implements, so I'm just futzing with it for a second. So I'm going to do a match here instead, I think, because that'll let me do this in the way that I want to. So we've got bool, float, int, color, string, whatever. These are all not going to be used. Oh, we can make it a bool value. Maybe we just make it a bool value. Since I am doing it like that already. You're never going to guess what just happened. Why is Tiled not liking me today? An error occurred while opening the project. Sick. I can already see it. Tiled is going to be the thing that I dislike the most about this project. Okay, this, edit tile sheet, down to the sensor. Sensor, click, convert to bool, checked. Okay, now it's a bool. We didn't export, let me export. Luckily this auto saves, so like tiled crashing is not that big of an issue. Tiled crashing is not fun though. I do not like tiled crashing all the time. Okay, so string value, but we don't have a string value anymore. We have Bevy ECS tiled, which is lib.rs. It's going to be a bool value. We're going to get rid of this. And then do we think this is just going to be a true in here? It is just a true in here. Yay. Okay, so bool, true. We could do is some and. We don't need to map this. Is some and property value this. If it's property value bool, then we call this B and we return B. And if it's not, then we return false because it's not. And we'll call this like is sensor, which should be a bool. We're going to dereference this because I'm assuming that's the issue. Is sensor. And then commands dot spawn debug render. I see y'all talking about Z indexing. This is tiled. That's not what I want. XPBD. This is what we want. A component that marks a collider as a sensor, also known as a trigger. This is what we want exactly. So how do I want to do that? I think what I'm going to do is take the easy out approach. Commands entity collider ID dot insert sensor. So if is sensor insert sensor needs to come in from Bevy XPBD. And then theoretically, what impact will that have on our collision? Let's try to figure it out before we run it. Component that marks a collider as a sensor, also known as a trigger. Sensor colliders send collision events and register intersections, but allow other bodies to pass through them. I guess this is if we're using like their collisions, which we could totally do. Actually, let's switch over to that because I think it will fix our issues, honestly, for the other stuff. So these are going to be static. Then we can insert sensor on it if it's a sensor. And then in main, wherever I put player, because I'm so good at organizing my code right now, we have our collider as a child. But the thing that I'm actually concerned about is that we are doing this check to see if it should be moving. And I think if we're using sensor and rigid bodies that we won't need this anymore, actually, because Bevy XPBD will just handle it for us and prevent us from moving into it. That is not going to be true for the dash, which it is currently not true for the dash, so I'm not worried about it. So that's a sensor. This is a collider that we should be going through. This is another collider. Why did that rotate? That's not good. Did I mess that code up? I didn't change any of this, right? Why do I have this with scale here still? That's not good. I don't think we're supposed to have that with scale. I don't remember when I put that in. Yeah, okay. I don't know why I had with scale there. I must have just not saved the file. Okay, so main, player, collider. Do we want this to be a rigid body? Like, it would have to be kinematic if so. I think... I don't remember how they expect us to control a kinematic rigid body. I know that Rapier 2D has different opinions about how you should do that. But we are now walking just straight through. Let's take a look at what they expect out of us here. Rigid body dynamic, rigid body types, movement, gravity mass, damping. We don't want dynamic. We don't have dynamic. Kinematic is what we want. Static bodies are what we want for most things. For some things, if we ever have like a moving platform, we want a kinematic. So that should work. Rigid body, modifying position directly, velocity, or forces. We could modify the transform. Moving by position is similar to teleporting. That's what I was expecting to read. You can instead change the velocity. Do we want to do this by velocity? I don't know that I want to do it by velocity. We can do by velocity for now. And then fix it later, I think. I started not going down this road because I wanted a little bit more control. But as we put the colliders in, I think doing velocity makes a little bit more sense for the moment. So we're just going to do linear velocity because we're not spinning. And then we're going to go down to the systems for the player when they're running. Timer tick, finished, whatever. This is our distance. Base run speed, delta seconds. This is how far we have to go. But I think we can just set the velocity at this point. So I think I'm just going to do the whole comment block on that. This is going to have linear velocity. We get rid of the need for children, which is cool. My question is linear velocity. Does linear velocity need to be on... I think we put the rigid body on the parent and it propagates. I think that's the way that that works. So I think this goes on the parent. We'll call that linvel. This is going to be mutable. This needs to be imported. This needs to be mutable. This is facing dot 0 times base run speed, which who knows what that's actually going to be in terms of like actual speed in game. This is directional 2D. Wait, facing is a normalized vector. Base run speed is a scalar. Dot as vec3. Oh, dot 0 is the vec3, I think. Yeah, direction 2D as mul output. I think that gives us a vec3. Could just as easily use a vec2 for position and use an int32 draw. Yeah. Can't multiply direction 2D by float. I don't want the direction 2D though. So this is not going to return me a vec3. It's a vec2. Cool. Just getting my stuff together here. Let. This is not a let anymore. Yeah. Let velocity equals this, and then linvel dot x equals velocity dot x, linvel dot y equals velocity dot y. Theoretically, that means we should move. I didn't switch the rigid body to be on the parent, though. I still need to do that. So we're not moving yet. But for the player, we'll add this here. And then I believe that means that any colliders that are children of this will count. Well, I wasn't wrong, per se. It's just that the linear velocity doesn't get zeroed out. So as long as I keep my keys on the keyboard, it looks fine. We're not doing any collision here, though. Like, we're not stopping. And also, when I take my hands off the keyboard, it just walks forever. So, new bugs. So we are in our player systems. If we are going to do it like this, we don't need children anymore that I know of. We could do the same check with the colliding entities. I wanted Bevy XPBD to handle this for us, though. Which I thought it was going to. Maybe I got something... maybe I got something wrong. Let's find out. Let's take a look at the examples. Rigid body static on a collider. Shapecaster, cool. I actually didn't know that was in here. Rigid body on the collider. That's my current concern. My current concern is basically iterate through collisions and move the kinematic body to resolve. If the collision didn't happen during the stub step, skip the collision. Okay, so they're doing a little bit fancier stuff here. They're doing basically like the simple version that I was doing before with colliding entities, like detecting whether there is a collision. They are doing inside of, I think, a different substep. So in solve user constraints, which is probably the right way to place to put it. I just didn't want to do that. So this is like detecting the collisions and either allowing them or not, if I'm reading this correctly. So I think this ends up being what we actually want. So it seems like we have to actually manage those collisions ourselves, which is interesting. That's not what I was expecting overall. But we can just kind of like yoink that. So let's do what, main.rs in playing. Where's playing? We have an update somewhere, right? Controller and then kinematic collisions is what I'm going to call this. And I'm just going to put it right here because I'm just debugging kinematic collision. Actually, that's not where we need to run it. We need to run it on a substep schedule for the physics schedule. They also have movement happening in very specific locations, which is interesting. The thing that I am less familiar with Bevy XPBD 2D is the proper location in the schedule to do the different kinds of movement. So this is an example that I'm going to have to dive into deeper later. Run collision handling and substep schedule, that's fine. So that should run. We aren't running, oh, where's scalar? Scalar. So we run this and still no collisions. Is this isn't just filtering, is it? Is kinematic and is kinematic. Otherwise, if it's kinematic and not kinematic, contact global normal times contact. That all makes sense. Let's go read a little bit. I think this is a long stream right now, but let's go read a little bit more before calling it. I know that the infrastructure stuff isn't the most exciting thing to watch. Bevy, XPBD 2D. Solve user constraints. The solver iterates through custom constraints created by the user and solves them. You can create new constraints by implementing XPBD constraint for a component. Okay, that is not enough information. This is the physics subsets. Post-process collisions. I plan to rewatch these as I learn Rust. I probably have better videos to watch. Update velocities, solve velocity constraints, positional angular constraints. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So there's 9 subsets, but there's 8 documented. Integrate narrow phase, post-process collisions, solve positional and angular constraints, and then I guess solve user positional and angular constraints. So this is what we want. This is actually exactly what we want. We want to prevent somebody from moving into that space. Well, I'm glad you're enjoying it at least. This is my first time building a 2.5D like game like this. So I've already done quite a bit here that I'm pretty happy with. I had a bunch of people last week ask me if I'm going to turn this into like a real game. And I think that my plan is there's a couple of like hard things that I need to figure out. Not like necessarily hard, but like things that I don't know if I can necessarily do. Like I need to fix the Z indexing. I need to do this collision stuff. I need to write the Bevy ECS tiled crate. And if I do that stuff, then I think the approach that I'm going to take is call it 3 months basically, and work towards a Steam capsule page for 3 months. And basically that gives me 3 months to work on it, and then a goal to work towards for the actual like Steam page. Like the Steam page needs specific things. I need to have, like a couple of photos, like 4 photos of the game in different settings, maybe a video depending and whatnot. So it gives me a very concrete goal to work towards. At the end of that 3 months, I make the decision about whether I'm going to put the Steam page up or not. And then if I do, I'll keep working on it. And if I don't, then TBD. But that's the idea anyway. We're already doing quite a bit to make this work. Blender exports to sprite sheets pulled into Bevy with some dynamic code for doing all the directional stuff. We've got a tiled integration working. We've got the collisions mostly working inside of tiled. Like I'm very confident that these collisions will work when I write the right code. I do need to do a little bit more Bevy XPVD 2D like investigation to know where I need to actually put the movement code, like when I need to run it. And these things like these constraints are things that I care about. And then I think it's just a matter of like building out the game. I think I'm pretty confident in mostly everything else that I'll need to do. And we can build out kind of like a small room, a small level, start spawning in some monsters, writing some AI. The art needs to get done at some point in that 3 months. So I'm going to try to keep it pretty small and scoped, but I'm not planning on shipping the entire game in 3 months. I'm just planning on shipping like, a couple of screenshots and like some gameplay. So I think this is going to be more of more on the side of bullet hell kind of thing. I think I'm going to drop you into a room and you are going to get attacked by things that you need to defend against. The controls probably a little bit more on the Hades side of things than other control systems. I kind of like the way that Hades has like quick attack, strong attack, and cast. So I think I'm going to start that direction, and I'm not going to mirror like exactly what they do, but I'm gonna use that as a broad directional. And then it's just going to be a matter of like creating a little world. But I'm pretty confident that if we get through this like Z indexing stuff, for example, like the frogs, so to speak, that needs to be eaten, then I will have a good path forward. But yeah, that's what I'm thinking for this right now. Okay, solve constraints. Store contact impulses and collisions. Apply accumulated translation to positions. And then in their example, they also have movement happening before the physics broad phase. So where's movement? Movement is here, and it uses linear velocity. Reset vertical velocity if grounded, otherwise apply gravity. Gravity is built in, so I don't think they're actually manually doing gravity. Slow player down. XYZ. Yeah, so they just have this running in the broad phase, which is interesting. I don't know that it needs to be there. And we do have an integration point here that is interesting. So in our systems, we have a couple of systems for being in different states. If I can get back to the player, we have this state machine that we've built, where you can be in one of a couple different states. So like idle, running, dashing, whatever. If you are running, then we are actually running the, like we don't trigger a system here. Like we aren't saying run the running system. What we are actually doing is creating systems for each of those states. And then I don't have a player plugin. I should have a player plugin. It's all in main, isn't it? Then every time we update, we are running those systems. So when we integrate here, instead of running here, we could run here, which puts it into the physics schedule in the same spot that the demo has it. I don't know what impact this will have overall, because I'm a little bit sketchy on the physics sub-steps. It is funny to see it glide around like this. So I'm not entirely sure. I think it might be because we have the collider on a child. Do we have an on exit trigger? Dash complete has directional input. I don't think we have a trigger for going out of running. I think that would be really useful to reset the... I guess the other thing is that if we are going to keep the movement in these systems, then things like dashing have their own control, and idling is really just where we need to add it. So if we take the linear velocity here and we put it here, which will be mute linvel. I'm using linvel because that seems to be used in a bunch of different places. I might go back on that and call it linear velocity just to have the longer name, especially since I'm streaming it for people. And then we're going to take this, and idling means that you are not going anywhere. So no matter what, this is going to be 0, and this is going to be 0. I don't know that I should be setting it every frame. We can probably, fix that in the future if it becomes an issue. But now we don't move, and now we're moving. I do feel like I see little hiccups. I don't know if that's animation or if that's physics. It does feel... If we go to main and we go to player, right, kinematic here, I don't think we should have kinematic on both. I actually think this causes a problem. Yeah, so we end up leaving it behind. So I need to figure out how to propagate the movement to the right thing. I am not sure that I should be putting this on a child at all. I don't think I'm supposed to. Rigid body, because rigid body affects colliders, right? I know it doesn't quite say that, but I do believe that that is the case. So we do have static on others. We have static on anything that is not moving. This is the collider for the player. But if we look at the... Actually, did I do it? Yeah, okay. Static here. So we have static on all of our colliders that are level set. Then we additionally have sensor on that one switch. But it's static on all the level stuff. It's kinematic on the player. We have movement happening before the physics broad step. We have constraints happening in the appropriate user constraints subset. And I think my issue currently is that the kinematic controller or the kinematic rigid body is on the parent of the collider, because I wanted to move the collider location. So I think all of that's correct. I just think that I've disconnected the rigid body and the collider by putting them on putting it on the child. The global position of a rigid body or a collider. Yeah, we aren't going to use that. So we have collider for detecting collisions and generating contacts, right? And my question, I guess, now is this kinematic thing looking for rigid body, position, and rotation? But the rigid body has the collider on a child, and I think they don't expect it to be on the child. So I think what I'm going to do to test that theory is I'm going to put the collider on the player. If I can find the right spot in my editor. Wow. So this is the player collider, right? And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this collider. I'm actually going to comment this out for the moment. We're not going to add a child. And we are going to add just the collider, which will sit right in the middle of the player. Which I think for our purposes will be fine. The thing that I would love to see is this making the collision work. It's very interesting that that stops us from moving. That's because I took away the child, right? Because this no longer has children. Turns out if you remove the children, the query looking for children doesn't find children. Okay, so that does not fix the... Oh, that does fix the issue. I don't know why I was running over the sensor being like, it doesn't work on the sensor. Okay, so this works, right? So literally the only issue here for the collisions is that I am putting the collider on a different entity than the kinematic body. I don't know offhand how to solve that. But I don't think it'll be a hard fix, right? I think I just need to see the right piece of code or understand how the kinematic and collider interact. In addition, Bevy XPBD automatically adds some other components for colliders, like collider parent, colliding entities. Collider parent stores the entity ID of the rigid body that a collider is attached to. If the collider is a child of the rigid body, this points to the entity's ID. Cool. This is actually really cool for us. If the collider component is instead on the same entity, this points to the collider's own entity. That makes sense. So we have collider parent. And I think the only thing that I'm thinking of is that this kinematic is probably looking for the wrong stuff. XBBD probably has a system with a query that needs both on the same entity. I don't think that's true. Maybe it's very possible that that is true. But offhand from reading the docs just now, I don't necessarily think it is. I think that this kinematic collision is querying for rigid bodies and positions and rotations. And I don't know that this logic is even landing. Right? So if we've got the case of a rigid body that's kinematic and a rigid body that isn't, this should fire, right? And this is the other direction. This is Z vector. It's a Z vector and not an axis. A vector is an axis, but I get kind of what you're saying. So this is happening, and this is the not kinematic plus kinematic situation, right? We run into it, we land, it is tracking there. Now, the thing that I'm going to test for is when we move the collider back to the child, I'm expecting to not see that debug. This is all code I don't need anymore. Player collider here. So player collider, get rid of the ellipse that is fake and add the child. And this should break our kinematic collisions system, if my guess is correct. So now when we do this, we never see that collision. So it's not Bevy XBBD that's the problem. It's us that's the problem. Specifically, it's this kinematic collision. This has collisions. And it queries for rigid body. So I think if I modify this system to look for the parent of the collider on the rigid body, that would fix the issue. I'm curious as to what we're getting here at all. Can we debug collisions? You sure that it's not dynamic? On the docs it says that kinematic does not respond to forces. Right, because kinematic is used for character controllers, moving platforms, and things that you want to programmatically move around the screen. Dynamic is for, like, if I was going to take a ball and I was going to drop it and it was going to bounce on its own off of a static, that is what a dynamic is. It's the ball that bounces around on its own. And it uses things like restitution and whatnot and friction. It's the dynamic is the classic like physics simulation, right? If you threw a bunch of balls around and they all were colliding with each other and the ground and whatever, that's dynamic. Kinematic is what you use for, like I said, things like character controllers and whatnot, and static is what you use for things that don't move. Yeah, the collider location is offset on X and Y values to be around the sprite's feet to get the collisions to feel right. That is absolutely correct. And it's really important that they feel right. They are not like physically accurate, if that makes sense. Ooh, that is so much data. Oh, that's not what I wanted. That is too much data. Yeah. And I think we will end up teleporting as well in our kinematic because we will have some kind of either dash or not necessarily a dash, but maybe like a circle that you position on the screen that you teleport to or something like that. We will eventually have intentional teleportation. We don't currently have intentional teleportation. We have incidental teleportation, but okay, so contacts. This is just an absolutely massive resource. I think we don't get information here that we actually want in terms of the debug. So let's try to get just the keys. Let's just make it a vec. Do we not have keys? It got to be .0.keys or something, right? I guess we could iter too, but like, isn't this a hash map or did I read that wrong? Collisions. This looks like a tuple key. But it doesn't have a name on it. That's interesting. I wonder what that is. Let's go look at the docs. So, collisions. Collisions stores pairs. Oh, those fields are private. That's why. Okay, that makes sense. Okay, so I guess we iter. Iter will give us the contacts, and then we can just collect and log out entity 1 and entity 2. I don't think this isn't like events. We don't need to worry about it like reading. Contacts, and then this is going to be like contacts.entity1 and contacts.entity2. And that's fine. And we'll just keep logging that out all the time. Because I think we only have, I don't want to debug that actually, now that I think about it. I want it on one line. So I'm going to info this, I think. And we'll use a debug formatter because we want to render the tuple, but we want to render all the tuples on one line for every time the system runs, because the system is just going to keep running and running. That is an interesting error. Symbols not found for architecture ARM64. Let me comment that out and see. Built for newer macOS version than linked. I think I have macOS updates to do. I do have macOS updates to do. Oh, that's unfortunate. I don't know what updated, but something just changed on my system. That's really weird, right? That is not what you like to see, is the way that I'll put it. It's a linker error. LD. Symbols not found for architecture. Linker failed. But there's so much. And it's warning object file was built for newer macOS version than being linked. I don't have any special settings in this project for linkers or anything. That is not fun. I can't see the top of the error message, so unfortunately, I'm going to try a cargo clean and a cargo run. But something changed on my computer just now, and I don't know why. Because it's not the program, as far as I can tell. I wonder if Rust Analyzer is messing with stuff. Or if it was Argus. Do I still have Argus enabled? Let's see. Extensions, show enabled extensions. I've disabled Argus, so I think I'm happy with that. I think I disabled Argus. Let's check. Yeah. Argus is disabled. Do I have any dependency that's not a full version? But it wouldn't have gone and fetched something. I don't think it picked up a new dependency. I definitely do have like not well specified. Like for example, Bevy is 0.13. But I don't think Bevy shipped anything just now. So Bevy is preparing for their 0.14 release currently. I would not expect Bevy to have just shipped something, and I also would not have expected it to like have pulled down. So they didn't. Bevy Asset Loader did have a bug fix that I think I saw today. Docs.rs Bevy Asset Loader. Specifically around texture atlases. So it's 0.20.2 now. But I don't think I picked up a dependency because I didn't see anything new come in anyway. And I also have the lock file. What are you using for collision detection? XPBD. Specifically the 2D version. I would have needed to run cargo update to get the new versions, yes. I don't think it's related to cargo, actually. I think something else on my computer like changed or did something or something updated when I wasn't looking. So we'll see if this build succeeds. If this build doesn't succeed, then I'm just going to call it. If the build succeeds, then we'll finish up what I was doing first. But yeah, I don't think I got any new dependencies. I don't think I got any, I don't think I got anything like that. I think that my dependencies are all revision locked as well for anything that's on Git. Leafwing, I'm using Git main. ECS tile map, I'm using Git main. But those both have revision locks. So they wouldn't have updated. I didn't run cargo update and I didn't do anything like that, so I wouldn't have expected that to happen. I don't think I'm using nightly. So yeah. I know that my computer does require updates. I'm on 14.2.1. I forget what the error message said. But I definitely do have to update my operating system. So I wouldn't be terribly surprised
But yeah, so this is the debug that we just wrote. That won't go into this run, but I'll immediately cancel it and then put that log back in. So what we're doing here is we have a kinematic body with a collider on a child. So we have entity 1 and child entity 2. The child entity has the collider. The parent entity has the kinematic rigid body. And when they are on different entities, then our collision substep isn't doing the right calculation. When they're on the same entity, it is doing the right calculation. So it's just a matter of making sure that we are doing the checks in the right spot based on how we want to set up our colliders. Yeah, the 14.5. That was really weird. Okay, so we're running. So I have no idea what just happened. Sorry to sorry to not have any info about what just happened, y'all, but I don't know what just happened. Something happened. That is like, I think the first time I've had that happen when not using something that I just updated or whatever. So we want these logs to come out. Specifically, I want to take a look at the contacts when we're running over that fence. Yeah, big shrug. You know, linker error says to me that something else went wrong, not that I did anything wrong, if that makes sense. Like, linker error means there's a setup problem or like a computer system state problem. So glad I'm streaming. Oh, I'm happy you showed up. Thank you for showing up. I'm doing every Saturday morning these days. So it's been, I don't know, 2 months of every Saturday morning or something like that. Maybe a little less. But I'm planning on continuing to do that for the moment. It was a long time to acquire that lock. Okay, so nothing. We hit play. There's a bunch of things colliding because we didn't remove anything or put anything on a collision layer. And then this is the new one. So the collision is happening, right? It's 40 and 30 here. We can see that showing up in the collisions. It's cool that XBBD has filters for collisions by entity and such. It's pretty ergonomic. Yeah, the collision layers is fantastic. I've used it in a number of projects at this point. And just being able to place things in different places and like, hey, you should collide with this, but not that, makes everything so much nicer. Okay, so we do have the collider happening here. So 4 contacts in collisions. Actually, you know what I should have looked at? I'm going to do this again with the intention of looking at those entity IDs and seeing if those entity IDs are the parent or the child. So this is 40 and 30 again, reasonably deterministic. Let's look at 40. 40 is a child of 39, which makes me think it's the collider that we had on the bottom of the player. Which to me looks roughly correct. Where is this? Children, tile. Oh, that's a tile. Okay, so 40 is a child of the tile. And then 30 is the other one. 30 is a child of the player. So we've got the player position collider is 30. And the parent is the thing that the kinematic body is on. So contacts, current substep, rigid body. I do feel like the rigid body status should propagate. So let's take a look at is kinematic, which is a function on rigid body. Really? Okay. That's interesting. RB1 position rotation, RB2 position rotation, bodies. Oh, because we're getting them straight from this query, and this query only queries for things with rigid body. That's why we have the rigid body. Okay. So what do we do for that? Maybe we do a second step for now. Maybe we just copy the logic. Bodies. I'm not naming this like that, so I will do attached colliders. And this is going to be collider parent, right? And collider parent will give us whether it is a kinematic or not. Or, you think or? If we do or, then we need to fetch the rigid body parent somehow. I was thinking through that. I don't think I want to complicate this right now. I think I just want to write some extra code. So I think I'm going to take attached colliders and I'm going to write this out. I'm basically going to duplicate this with a little bit more logic. And get many mute is no longer going to be applicable because it's going to be attached colliders. We're iterating over it twice, so there's a little bit to be concerned about. Not performance-wise, but just like double application of effects-wise. So for collisions and collisions.iter, right? We're looking for things that are rigid bodies. I do feel weird about needing to do a relationship here and not having this like propagated. Collider parent gives us an entity. We can do whatever we want with that entity and fetch the rigid bodies, which I think is my plan here. So let's do okay. And we need to do bodies.getMute entity one, right? And I'm just kind of doing this as a test, I think. So this is no longer what we need, right? This is going to be get mute on the only entity. And this is going to probably be, actually, now that I think about it, let's leave this. And for contacts and collisions, right? If we have a collider with a parent that we can get a rigid body for. So if we have a collider, entity. If we have a collider, entity one, I think I'm only going to do it for entity one. Attach colliders.get contacts.entity one. else continue. So we're going to skip if the parent entity doesn't exist here. Why is that still a result? Oh, because I didn't save it? No. I'm done thinking for the day. I'm going to go listen to Breakcore. Thanks for streaming. All right, yo, see ya. Will this compile if there are mute in one of the queries and the same query components are queried? There are different ways you can get around doing access in queries. So it depends, is the answer. There's something called a param set and things like that. So we could do a query with multiple mutes or multiple overlapping, but you have to specify it in the type system. So parent entity equals attached colliders get contacts entity 1. So if we have an entity that has a parent, continue. Right? And this is parent entity. I forget what these are. Position, rotation. It's like this, right? I actually don't think we want these. So I think I'm just going to remove them. Parent entity. And then this needs to be parent entity. And then we basically do the same thing, right? Your English and typing is so bad? I don't think so. Found entity, found collider parent dot 0, right? Or dot, yeah, it's dot 0, right? Collider parent, oh, private fields. Is it dot get? It's dot get. Okay, so if I've done this correctly, then we have an additional set of logic here. I did not do this correctly. Our query panicked. This is the issue. I think this is what you were mentioning before. So we're looking for entities for mute position. And this is going to be without collider parent. Okay, that did not do what I wanted it to do. Also, we don't need the position here, I don't think. Let's debug parent entity here. So if we're standing on the other collider, we should get a bunch of parent entities. So we do. The parent entity is collider parent 40. That's incorrect. If I remember correctly, 40 is the rail. So we need to do, I guess we are doing this though. The only issue is that it's actually entity 2 that we need, right? not entity one. This is going to be really awful. This is completely just debugging. This is not going to be this is not going to work for the long term. I'm just checking to see if this works. Okay, so that's 31. And 31 is the player, which is good. That's what we want. So theoretically, that should work. It doesn't. And I need to figure out why. I don't think we ever get to this point. Let's do one more debug. What time is it? Almost 12. Need lunch in a second. Okay, so we've got this. We've got our collisions happening. We've got the parent entity. The collider parent is 31. 31 is the player. That's not what I meant to do. 31 is the player. So I think there's just a way in which I need to take the contacts and I need to use the collider for the actual collision stuff here, which I think we're doing. And then we need to test if the parent is kinematic. And then this position actually needs to be the child. I think that's the answer. But that's a little bit involved. You like components? You see, when I'm reading chat, I can't even tell that that's an N or an M. So it doesn't even matter to me. I read that as components. But I'm going to call it for the day. I'm going to fix up some of this collision code. So the collision code for next stream should be ready to go. We're basically there. I just need to use the right element here and then clean up this code a little bit. And then we'll have collision for everything. We'll have sensors. Next week, we'll be able to do like, if you step on the sensor, then it triggers the whatever happens and things like that. And then the other major thing that we need to fix is the Z indexing for the sprites, which may or may not be an issue. I think it'll be fine, but we'll see. So thanks for hanging out, everyone. And I'm going to call it on that.